He is Dan Lynch, not to be confused with the Dan Lynch who was associated with the New York Giants. I'm sure he gets that all the time. This is the Dan Lynch who works for Sirius XM Pac-12 Radio, producer extraordinaire on channel 373. I encourage everybody to go out and check out his work. He is fully invested in the conference. And on the Onto Something podcast here, I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor with Fox Sports Radio and a broadcaster for UCLA. We are firmly invested in the story of Dan Lynch. So we're going to have some fun looking at his inspirational qualities, some stories that he's had along the way. But I want to begin, Dan, by saying, where did you score those glasses? Because they sure are sporty.
Well, Bryan, thank you for having me, man. Been a huge fan of you for the last 3 years covering the conference. You are the voice of the Bruins to me.
Oh, stop it. Not even close.
Let's just start with that. These are Warby Parker. Going into the 2021 season, I knew I was going to be on camera a little bit more. And I kind of just needed a little bit more of an edge. I don't think I'm a dumb person, but these bad boys make me look like 10 degrees higher on an IQ test. So yeah, there's a method to my madness. It works. I actually legitimately do have a prescription. So they're not just like little things that you could get at like Urban Outfitters or anything like that. But I did not realize how expensive eyewear was going into the process. So yeah, I Warby Parker, shout out to them. Great. They fit my face. Amazing. And again, I just look like a genius in them. So I'll be rocking them going forward, Bryan.
So you got a little edge with those glasses. I want to hear about the edge you carried yourself with as a tight end for King's College.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, if you're a tight end, no matter what division you're playing in, King's College was D3. I say the highest division, but they teach their own. You got to have an edge because you got to be a guy who's versatile, right? You got to know what the linemen are doing. You also have to know what the quarterback is going to call, and you also need to know what the receivers are doing. And I was, for my entire, from what I can remember, just being versatile has set me apart from other people, right? And that's why I loved playing tight end, because I like being on both sides, all right? Being with the big boys, the big uglies, getting down, getting that three-point stance, firing out, taking out the edge. But I also like lining up, being the Y, getting out there, showing my moves, going out, boom, boom, boom. And I tried to bring that to my radio career. And it's been extremely successful for me. So like I, as a tight end, I've carried that into my life. I think it's the best position in football. Just because you're everything. You gotta speak both languages. And when you move that into the broadcasting world, you gotta speak both languages. Covering the Pac-12, listen, football, basketball, those are our big bad boys, right? But we cover everything. We're the Conference of Champions not because of those two sports. It's because of all the Olympic sports that we win, right? So you have to be versatile in those senses, and really give everyone a voice and be versatile enough to be like, okay, we're going to talk about the crew team this week. What can we do with this? Oh, the women's soccer team, they're in the championship against USC, UCLA. It's going to be an amazing matchup. Be versatile enough to do that. So I brought that to my career, especially into the Pac-12, and it's been nothing but successful.
You can follow Dan Lynch on Twitter, Dan Lynch Spurts. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. So you have to have this diversified skill set to be successful in this business. It makes you more employable. It makes you more hireable. You made that connection between football and now in the working world. The competitive drive you had as a tight end, how does that compare to the competition and your drive to succeed in radio and never letting anything get in your way, keep focusing on your dreams and continuing to prod forward?
I consider myself a starter. Being the producer of Pac-12 today. In football, it's either you're part of the starting 11 or you're on the bench. Maybe you'll get in a couple times, maybe you won't. And when you get in on those couple of times, you got to make an opportunity for yourself, right? So going back to that analogy, when I was coming up in the industry, I considered myself a backup. I considered myself someone who needed to, move up the totem pole, move up the roster. What could you do in practice? What could you do here? What are you going to show on film, right? So when I first got into the industry, my first show I ever produced was on Mad Dog Sports Radio. It's called Nightcap. They still run it. George Reister, I believe, is the host right now. But I was working, this has to be 2016, 17. My show was from 11 p.m. Eastern to 3 a.m. Eastern. No one else wanted it, but you know what? It was a chance to be a starter, and I just went with it. we had fun with it. We changed up the mentality of the show. Truckers are pretty much listening to us. That's about it. Maybe we got a couple listeners on the West Coast just because of the time difference. The show was produced from New York City, but I became a starter in that show. And when you're on the football field, everything is filmed. When you're producing a show, everything is recorded. People could go back and look at and break down. Just like we're breaking down film every single week, you could break down audio. Was this a good segment? Was this a guy? Did he come off the ball with his right foot? I made those comparisons just to kind of always elevate me in the broadcasting industry. And I just kept getting opportunities. I just kept moving up and up and up, bigger shows. Boom. Okay, this is more of a chance for me to start. Okay, now I'm actually legitimately the starter on the tight end for the football team. Now I'm producing on a bigger channel, producing on a bigger show. How am I going to keep going? Right? Yeah, you're going to mess up sometimes. That's life, right? But you got to learn from those mistakes. And when you're in those moments of opportunity, what are you going to do? And I think my stats are pretty high. From like, if we're gonna make that comparison,
for sure.
From what I've done from Mad Dog to now, I mean, I'm really happy with my progress, but not satisfied. Never satisfied, Bryan.
So how do you deal with that? There's the constant grind, the constant, I want to get better.
Yeah.
I want to expand. But then when do you allow yourself to appreciate it for a little bit? Not to be complacent. I think appreciation and complacency are different.
Yeah. I constantly have to tell myself, everything's okay right now. It's all good. Like, don't compare to others, right?
Yes.
It's so hard to do in this industry because we there's two sides of everyone, right? There's a side that me and you are talking right now in the air, and there is a persona and what the public is going to see, right? But then you have moments of time when you're not on the air and you're thinking about, okay, how could I get better at this? How could I do this, right? If you cut that out and just kind of just think forward when you're on the air, like, in those moments where you're thinking like, oh, wait, I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have said that. That's just going to mess you up going forward. And that took me time. That it took me about a year to understand that. But that's what just reps and everything like that. But yeah, one thing I think a lot of people in our industry, we just compare to each other. And sometimes you just have to be yourself. And that's just the best way forward. And people react off that so much better than someone who's coming on there, becoming, this other guy that they see. And you're like, because people can see through really, really easily. I also think in the audio format, it's so easy to hear people's realness, and opposed to TV, right? Because these guys have makeup on, they got, their suits are all paid for and all this type of stuff, right? They look great. Don't get me wrong, but you could be like, that's not real. Radio, it's just straight voices. This format is going to be on, video and all that stuff, right? But like radio, people could tell authenticity so much easier. So yeah, it's all just about being real and just trying not to compare and just being yourself and going forward.
How has trying not to compare been hardest for you, especially when you were trying to break into the business, when you have these visions of what you want to do, you see what maybe some of those around you are doing, and you're dealing with that and having to find your niche, find your way into the business?
Right. So I was with Barstool Sports for about 2.5 years. And what that company taught me, I have nothing but kind words to say. I know they're going through some things right now. From my experience being there, it was nothing but a professional environment, honestly. And I have great friends over there still who I talk to on a daily basis, really good people over at Barstool Sports. So I just want to get that out there. But what Barstool Sports taught me specifically was to be a little weird, be a little kooky, take a little bit of risks, right? And I'm not saying that Sirius gives me a platform that I have a lot of freedom. But for a while at Sirius, when I was younger, I didn't realize I had that many freedoms, right? Where I could do this, I could do that. We have access to this. Use everything that you have to create an amazing show, but now you have to add your own personality to it. Barstool Sports taught me that. One of my guys over there is Dan Katz, Big Cat, and when I was producing a couple of his shows, I was like, man, this guy just doesn't care. He's going to say whatever's on his mind first. Go. And then they expand off of it. So listen, I mean, the platform I'm on now, Pac-12 Radio, We can't go as crazy as Barstool, right? But we have a limit of what we can do. And I always try to push it with my guys to be a little bit different than every other show on conference channels. Hey, let's have a little bit of fun with this. Let's poke at this a little bit more, but there's a method to our madness, right? And you just have to be a little kooky to be in this industry. You have to be a little weird. There's not, I always say this to people, there's really not too many normal people in radio.
Yes.
And once you're in it, it becomes a little bit more normal. But I think if someone came from the accounting world into the broadcasting world, they'd be like, what? Whoa. And once you can roll with the weird and roll with the craziness and it becomes normal to you, the job becomes a lot easier. But you have to fully accept that you might be a little weird and run with it, because people love that.
Well, yeah, ordinary is boring. Who wants that? They want a character. They want somebody with some pizzazz and some charisma, which is a big part of who you are and what you've been about. What does fun look like for you on Pac-12 radio?
So the Pac-12, when I first came out here, I'm from the East Coast. I grew up in New Jersey, spent time in New York City, working on all that type of stuff. And I fully admit, I watched SC when they were amazing in the early 2000s. That's about it. I knew coming into the conference that you had to be a little bit kooky to cover it because we need attention.
Sure.
So what's going to separate us? What's going to make us better than the ACC radio? What's going to make us better than SEC radio with Alabama, LSU, is our kookiness. Is if we have a weird storyline. Perfect example. The storyline this week between Washington and Oregon, talking about shooting battle, right? Most other channels, hey, it's bulletin board material. Let's carry it on. Not our show. No. We're legitimately looking at the GPAs of both rosters. We're talking about actually where, what parts of the country most of these recruits are coming to and where their public school ranking is in the United States. So it's just like little things that people will be like, I never thought of that. You know what? That makes a lot of sense. And after our findings, we actually found out that Oregon technically has quote unquote smarter individuals on their football team based off of our rankings, right? And that's what separates us, right? We're not afraid to go down those roads where most people aren't. And that's the Pac-12 in general for you. Like, you look at Oregon, right? Oregon was that weird team that had weird uniforms and everyone was like, ew, what is going on in Eugene? They are some weirdos in the Northwest, right? But now look at the rest of the country. Everyone wants to be like Oregon, right? You just have to be a trendsetter. And the West Coast, we're always trendsetters in culture and in fashion and in lifestyle, right? And I'm trying to bring that to Pac-12 radio, my man.
You're doing a great job. And it was so fun going to the Rose Bowl against Oregon and being there with you this year. What a finish that was. And I
think so far the Pac-12 game of the year. We still have a lot more to go, but to me, from like quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4 together, like that represented the Pac-12, right? And a lot of drama in that game. I'm still going to go on this, Bryan. I think if DTR was in on that last drive, would have at least gotten to field goal range. I truly believe that.
I'm totally with you. And having a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau, how do you stop that, man? And he had such a great game. And you consider all the NFL scouts that were there watching him. If he hasn't solidified himself as the number 1 overall pick, I don't know what, because that was the story, I thought, in that game, Dan, that UCLA, no matter who they threw at him, they double teamed or whatnot, they just had no answer for him.
No, we were both on the field after the game, and I saw Kayvon walking off, and I've never seen a football player look like that in pads. Yeah, like he passes the eye test times 1,000. It was weird to see how high his hips go. Right, like he is just a difference maker, and we're so lucky to have him in the conference to show like, hey, there is talent like this out here, and if you come to a place like Oregon and you're a top 5 or a 5-star in the country, you could be just like him. He's a freak of nature. He is a difference maker. I saw him at Pac-12 Media Days back in over the summer, and he was just in streetwear and stuff, but he just looks different. I'm even gonna say a hot take. I think he's better than Chase Young. I think he's gonna have a better NFL career than Chase Young. And you know what? That guy also represents the Pac-12 so well. He has a legit personality. He wants to become a broadcaster. He's doing things that so many other players could not do for the last, I don't know, 25 to 35 years with NIL. And he's just, I mean, people need to realize and look this guy up because he is a modern football player. And it's going to be amazing. I have high hopes for him in the NFL. I think he's a no doubt top 3 pick. But yeah, Bryan, that was such a great game, man. A good environment. The Rose Bowl was popping that day. I really felt like, West Coast football is back.
Yeah, it did. And it was a great environment. They really had a lot of fun. It seemed like a party on the field right before the game ended when everything was so close. UCLA was trying to make that comeback. And you brought up the NIL situation. Curious to see what that is like for you as a producer and how you want to structure shows in covering said NIL deals and news that involves the Pac-12 and then also your relationship with the conference. And so dealing with that side of things and the NIL, how do you make it all work?
Yeah, I mean, since I've been working at Sirius XM, I've been lucky enough to work on shows where we do have relationships with the league. And NFL radio, NBA radio, Mad Dog, we do have relationships with the league. So you'd always have to kind of balance, right, of what is honest talk. What we're not going to report anything that's fugazi, right? That's terrible radio. But there's a line, right? We don't want to disrespect anyone. When the NIL stuff started coming out, I worked with 2 former athletes, Sean O'Connell and Geoff Schwartz. They were just thinking back on so many players that they had on their teams who legitimately couldn't afford a meal, right? Couldn't take their girlfriend to the movies on a night because they legitimately couldn't work. So I think with the NIL stuff, it was just more of a celebration of like, wow, this is ending and culture is changing. And the West Coast, I mean, California was the first state to put it in motion. So we've been on NIL since, man, I want to say that before the pandemic, really, because we were like, wow, this is going to happen. It was the first time that both sides of the table, the Democrats and Republicans, actually agreed on something. And that's why I think sports is so beautiful when it comes to politics, because there's no red, there's no blue. It's really just what we want for the culture of the sport, right? And I thought that was a good sign of step forward in college football. But yeah, there always has to be a fine line of what we could say, what we couldn't. But we do a really good job of just honestly, if we're going to rip a team, we're going to come back with something positive. So, okay, hey, you know what? Arizona hasn't won a game this year, but USC is coming in. USC is nothing that they can to handle. Sure. It's at Tucson. Let's go Wildcats. So you always kind of have to full circle it back around, make it positive, but at the same time, don't be fugazi, because people will be able to be like, yeah, they're lying.
Dan Lynch is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. A lot of positive reviews for your show with Sean O'Connell and Geoff Schwartz. What is the quirkiest, most fun thing? I'll start with Geoff Schwartz in getting to work with him.
Geoff, if anyone's ever met Geoff and you see him in person, you're like, oh my God, that is the largest human being I've ever seen in my life. And he is intimidating. Geoff is okay. So I'll give you a funny story. It's the second or third time I'm meeting Geoff. I met Geoff a couple times in New York, but I wasn't really producing for him. I just like, oh, he came in the next show. I'm a Giant fan. So I'm like, oh, that's Geoff Schwartz. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that guy, he was pretty good for us, but he was always hurt. But I was like, I'm not going to say that to Geoff, but whatever. He walks in, he's like, hey guys, what's up? What's up? And you're just like, oh, that's Geoff's personality. Geoff is just, he's a gentle giant, man. He's so intelligent. He's so thoughtful. But at the same time, with him being like that, he has a side to him where he's not Pac-12 weird. He's got that Pac-12 weird in him. He's from LA. He knows how to be entertaining. And that fits perfectly with the conference. On the opposite side, we have more of our, serious type of dude, the guy who's going to drive the show, Sean O'Connell, former Ute, UFC, MMA fighter. Another guy I would never want to mess with. Like, this was the first time in my life, Bryan, where like my bosses who I worked for could actually kick my ass. Like I had to go into thinking about that. Like, hey, if they don't like this segment idea, I can't really be spicy back with them because if you've ever seen Sean O'Connell fight, that guy is a rock. Have you ever seen Geoff pull and take out like a linebacker? It's bizarre. Geoff is 6'7", probably 325, and could run, I'm not kidding, a 4.6. These guys are freaks of nature. So I had to like get that balance of like, okay, they're kooky, they're weird, but they're also big alpha males. So you got to like kind of get that all together. And now we have Pac-12 today. And I think a lot of people, whenever you're starting a new show, there is a grace period of like 3 months of like, okay, trying to figure out where I could be in. Should I come on the air at this time? Should I do this, do that? And Sean and Geoff were so helpful with me during that process. They opened the doors and just kind of said, Dan, go. And I'm so grateful for that, man. Those guys are my dudes. I love them, love working with them. Also, a guy, Steve Kono, who's my associate producer. He's also a part of the brains of what we do on the show. So the guys have just given me every single opportunity. And like I said, going back full circle to the beginning of our conversation, I feel like I'm a starter. Those guys are vets. And you just got to make your way. You can't make excuses. Just make it go and make it work. And they give me every single opportunity to continue to be a starter and legit put out good stats.
Well, they see the work that you put in and how talented you are and intelligent. So you deserve everything that you're getting. I got one more question for you, Dan. And you spoke about how empowering your hosts can be and the work environment. What about your bosses and them giving you these opportunities and the trust and the pride they have in your work?
So this all starts at the top at SiriusXM. Scott Greenstein, who is running the company. I have nothing but respect for that man. Jennifer Witz as well. They are the captains of the ship. During the pandemic, we saw so many companies go under and fold. I have to admit, I was never nervous with Sirius. And I think if I was nervous about, hey, my job might be taken away tomorrow, like, oh my God, the Pac-12 is not playing next year. What am I going to do? Right? Even when that happened, Bryan, I wasn't nervous. So it really starts at the top of the SiriusXM empire, right? And it trickles down. And it goes to a guy named Steve Cohen, who is in charge of all the sports broadcasting. That guy is amazing. He's been one of my mentors since I've been at Sirius. He's always had my back. He's always trusted me. He's told me what here's why I respect Steve. He's told me when I've done really, really well. He's also told me when I've done really, really bad. And I need that because I'm a former athlete. I respect my, people who coach me and get to me where I need to go. And I really take that full heart. So Steve Cohen's amazing. And then we go trickle down even more to Mike Masvinsky and Shane Connolly. Both guys are amazing. They give me full range. They also are very critical, but also very rewarding. And they kind of just let us go. They also understand our time slot, right? So we're 4 to 6 Pacific. It's a tough time slot, especially with coaches and teams practicing and stuff like that. But that's nothing but an excuse. So what could we do in the meantime between that, right, to preview games and all that type of stuff? So I have nothing but respect for my bosses who have just given me the creative freedoms that I need to put out a product every single day, 5 times a week, and making the most entertaining show on the West Coast.
Dan, you certainly do have such a great product, and I think you are a rising star
in
this business. We're going to look back in a couple years and I'm going to be like, I knew Dan then. So I just see this trajectory that has this exponential. I'm looking at like a parabolic curve here with you, and it's fun to see how far you've come. And I know, Dan, as I wrap it up with you, how much more is in your future and how grateful SiriusXM and Pac-12 Radio is to have you on their roster.
Oh, man, Bryan, thank you so much, man. I mean, before I knew you, we had a texting relationship, and I'm like, Bryan's moving. Bryan's on a tennis broadcast right now. No one else wants to do that, but Bryan's on the tennis. I'm a huge tennis player, so I appreciate it and I love it. But yeah, man, in this industry, you have to have a balance of being humble, staying focused, and not paying too much attention to the outside. But you got to have confidence in this industry. If you don't have confidence in this industry, people will see right through it. So it's all about just being humble, staying on key, staying on the tracks and going forward, getting to the next station. At the same time, you got to have a little swag. If you don't have a little swag, man, who wants to pay, who wants to listen to you? Who wants to watch you? Who wants to do anything like that? So once you could understand that and harness that inner swag, that inner confidence, man, the world's your oyster, and you just got to go.
I got to finish this by saying I got to have a little bit of swag, knowing that, things happen when you least expect it, and getting that call up to do the UCLA pre and the post game show for the November 13th game against Colorado, and taking the phone calls afterwards, and then doing the long pregame show at the Rose Bowl. That's what we all look forward to. We put in the work, we keep grinding, and then, like you said, the relationships, and the more you work at your craft, the more opportunities come your way. You are a testament to that, Dan Lynch. And so I encourage everybody to follow you on Twitter at Dan Lynch Spurts, not sports, Spurts.
Like I said, Bryan, you gotta be a little quirky. You gotta be a little weird. You gotta be a little different, right? Dan Lynch sports. That's boring. What's out of you? Let's see what the people react off of. All right.
Oh, yeah. Well, you are in a great spurt currently with Pac-12. Many more to come as far as your career growth. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and UCLA, on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. Dan, thank you for making the time, man. Really appreciate it.
Bryan, you're the man. I love you, bud.